Okie dokie. So for the purposes of the recording, welcome everybody to the survey working group meeting, where we're discussing the progress of writing up the ISCET survey for clinical eye tracker use. So thank you, everyone. I'm trying to do a better job of making notes and kind of summarising our actions and trying to circulate those so we can keep more of a track of those. So if it's okay with everybody, I'll just kind of quickly go over the actions from the last meeting so we can keep up to date with if they're done. Is that all right with everyone? Yeah. So I'm just going to add these notes to the chat. Fiona, did you have something to add at that point?
No, not really.
Sorry, I thought you came in on that one, but that's fine. So I'm just going to make some notes as we go along today, but we had a couple of actions from the last meeting about the working group adding any critical comments to the research questions. So I think that's complete because I could see that some people had a look at it and added other comments. We did, Onyeka's not able to attend today. She has sent her apologies, but we did review the survey content to ensure that the proposed research questions would be answered by the survey responses, and Onyeka kind of cross-checked that. And then the other actions were mainly relating to the results. And we did actually push this meeting back a couple of weeks just because I think you guys needed a little bit more time. Hi, Rasha. Rasha, just to let you know, we're recording the meeting. So just to let you know.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks for joining. So we're just quickly going over the actions from the last meeting. So I assume that the results action to work on the responses is complete, because
I would say nearly complete, very nearly. We have to discuss one column, which was where it was gaze disorders. So we're going to have to go through that one. But that, and a little bit of cross-checking, but we're mostly there.
Lovely. Thank you, guys, because that's probably been a big job to go through all of that. And then there was also an action relating to the free text responses. I'm guessing as well that's ongoing and nearly complete, is it? There was a bit of discussion about the steps that you were going to go through for that, with Daniel going through that.
Yeah, that was, sorry, my response to the last one was in relation to that as well. Yeah. So this so Daniel's done a kind of initial pass, and Fiona and I have been going through as well.
Amazing. So thank you guys for working on that. So the other actions were, and that's probably going to form the majority of the meeting today, to discuss the results, and then from then how we structure everything afterwards. And then the other actions were relating to communication with the working group and the wider forum. So we did put I did put a summary of the research questions on the forum. So I'm sure you remember we were talking about making sure that there's a record of our progress and interaction with others using the forum. And I did send a recording of the meeting to C1. So I think that did go on the website, didn't it?
Yeah, I think Matt uploaded, I changed these. I uploaded it to YouTube channel and also got the link to the website. And Matt added the notes, I think.
I can see it on the website. Yeah, it's the 19th of November. So that's all on there. I can't remember if it was me that added it or not, but it's on there.
Yeah. Hi, Amanda. So welcome. Just to let you know that we're recording the meeting, Amanda. Thank you for joining. Great. Okie dokie. See if I can blow that a little bit. Fiona.
Yeah, thanks. So just in terms of the research questions, I know that when I drafted some up and we had them in the Google Doc, and there were some comments in there, we discussed turning those, like just identifying exactly which variables should be used to answer each question, or each, variables as they are in the data set.
Yeah.
Has that been added to the research questions now?
Yes. So on page 10 and 11, the questions were taken from our original questions when we were developing the survey. So rather than kind of do that backwards, we kind of I did go back and check what our original questions were when we were designing the survey.
So you're talking about the questions in the survey rather than the research questions.
So the research questions, I guess the survey questions came from those initial research questions. So they were broadly under, so on page 10, they're reported as question 1 and 2 with kind of sub-questions under those headings, really. How are eye trackers used clinically, and what guidelines, if any, are used? So those are the questions. And then what Onyeka and I have done is added the table below, which is just going through. We can remove that from the manuscript, but it was more to keep track that actually the content of the survey would answer those questions. Does that answer? Or
can you post a link to the actual document? I know it's somewhere in my emails, but
sorry. So this is the link to the manuscript.
Thank you. Okay, in the table of questions.
Sorry, Matt.
I should say, where the table of questions. Oh, I see it now. Yeah, it's sort of. I don't know what page number.
So it's page 10 and 11.
Okay, thank you.
So that doesn't need to stay within the manuscript. That was more our kind of cross-checking that we are ensuring that all of the survey results are kind of included at some point to answer those questions. Does that answer it, Fiona, or?
I'm just a little bit confused because I'm talking about, like, I wasn't around when you designed the survey, but the questions I see on page 10 are ones that I had put in, right? Afterwards.
I think they've.
So when we were talking about, maybe that was
great.
at the end of the introduction.
Yeah, so I think you'd put some in, and then that's also, I think, been edited to ensure that it matches with our original questions that we had. I
don't see any edits, but maybe the last one, are there limitations to barriers or concerns? That one seems new.
Yeah.
But the rest seems the same as what I put in. But
okay.
so and just because, like, these are ones that I just didn't put in after, I wasn't around when the questionnaire was first designed. So this is like retrospective. But each of these questions were the ones where we had discussed attaching which variables should we use to answer those questions. So that's what you've got in the table below?
Yes.
Okay. And so for the first one, how are eye trackers used clinically? This is just very broad. So that's an empty cell there because...
Yeah, because question 1, like how are they used clinically, is kind of comes within A, B, C, D, E, and F.
Right,
so
right. Oh, I see.
Explicit parts of the question.
Okay, that's fine. That's all I need to, plot results, I think.
Okay.
Once we're clear on the data.
I think the work that Fiona and Daniel and I have been doing in terms of combining these survey questions, in a lot of cases, the same question is asked in multiple questions in a way. So maybe I'm happy to add maybe a column to this to actually point out which column name is going to be in the statistical analysis for that particular question.
That would be great, Matt. That would be great, because honestly, I'm going cross-eyed trying to
there's a lot of columns
forward and back on this enormous table now. For those checking just is that one in the right place, it becomes really difficult with the repeat questions showing up all the way across. So I think the sooner.
Yeah. And I think as well, I mean, I've not used Qualtrics before, but even though you try and present it, create it in Qualtrics in a logical way, it spits things out column by column. And
and
if you've selected something different, we obviously kept this open to multiple users completing it, but that's kind of added a layer of complexity in this huge table that comes out.
Yeah, and I mean, I think like in some cases it was where maybe there was intended to be a kind of logical exclusion, like an either or choice, but that didn't always seem to be what they were brought through in the question order. So that confuses it further a little bit. So one of the things that we did was to try and preserve the cases where, let's say, a free text response or multiple questions might have allowed people to be in several categories and should do. So we went through each question logically to see should people be able to respond to yes to several of these categories, or are they mutually exclusive? So that we don't lose the more fine-grained information, like someone could be a clinician, but also something else.
Well, what we asked them to do is if they were completing the questionnaire in multiple capacities, we asked them to select one and complete it, and then complete it again under their new subheading. So if they were clinician and also a manufacturer, we asked them to, that's how it was written, okay. But whether that's actually...
That's important to know, actually. So it would be good to maybe put a note in of that too. Because I think just anywhere where I can pick it up, even maybe onto this table, because I'll be looking into there for the question numbers. But Matt, it would be great if you could put the variable headings there instead. Sure, just to say to the group that the idea, if you see someone who has, for example, what we've done is first of all try and make it numeric so that it's easier to plot and export and understand. And that means recoding what were originally text-based responses. And there's always a little bit of agreement or consensus to be made, because it's not always black and white which way you go. And in those cases, we've recoded where it's just zeros and ones. So one is like a tick, and no value means not appearing in this variable. And I would suggest that we also make exclusion variables in the same way. So it's, for me, it's always a first principle, edit the responses as little as possible, rather than replacing or deleting people or certain responses because the person maybe isn't as clear-cut clinical as we would like. I would suggest that instead of doing that, preserve all that, but add an exclusion variable where we put a tick on any responses for that variable. Because it could be that for some questions you want to include everyone, for other questions you only want to ask clinicians, and so on, and those exclusion variables will leave all options open.
What I can do as well is this is picking out the numbers of the questions, specifically be answered, but I think it might be helpful if I create another table where I can say this is how you can pull out certain people. So, if you want clinicians, it's this column, if you want, etc. Because then when you're doing your statistical analysis, presumably you're going to be, you'll take, for example, a combination question 40 or whatever, but you might want to say, how did that break down by different groups?
So I would really just name the exclusion variable after the particular issue. So you could have like a variable that is clinician exclusion. And then it's anyone who is not a clinician gets a 1.
Yeah. Okay. So in this table, I'll put down the name of the columns you're going to need to actually pull out the specific question, but also the names of the columns you'd need to then separate that by group.
Yeah, I would just go with the separate by group, and then we can decide who do we want to include or exclude from each of these research questions.
Okay. So I'll make a separate table.
You could do, or you could put it into this one. I mean, I think what I'm going to aim to do is try and get all the numerical and collapsed variables off to the left. So you no longer need to go scrolling miles away to the right to find the variables that have been collapsed.
Fair enough.
And then once they're kind of more side by side, it'll also be a lot easier to blame responses to certain individuals a little bit more clearly, because God bless your eyesight, both yourself and Daniel, but honestly, it's becoming a little unwieldy right now. And before I go breaking out, I think we should be really sure that what we've gotten there is correct.
Yeah.
The other piece that we're missing in terms of writing up the data handling and just explaining in a replicable way what we've actually done is, Gemma, whatever happened between the original file and what we got to work with. So just any steps that we're taking there also need to be explained in a replicable way, and then we can pick up from there and talk about what we did with the text.
Yeah.
We have that at the moment through a series of email exchanges. So every time one of us has handled the file, we've left a set of bullet points as to what we've done. But we do need to collate that somewhere.
Yeah, and I think that should probably come in the methods here, shouldn't it? I think we should probably have like a data handling.
Yeah, or even as an appendix. You could have a more detailed appendix where we actually get into the details of how we collapsed, because I think it'll become too long and actually quite boring to discuss that. That's really something for people who want to replicate, get into it. So if those details were in an appendix, that would be pretty standard, I think.
And also, it's whether there's a place for like recording this documentation somewhere on the ISCET website.
Yeah, I would imagine we want to have the data hosted somewhere people can access in some anonymized form. So it would become both an appendix to the paper and then also a README to the shared repo.
Yeah, I think this is probably something else for to take back to ISCET for kind of our recommendations for like future work, because I think things like how you handle it and process it for people to, because the idea of the survey was that we would implement guidelines and then kind of resurvey people later down the line, to find out how useful it's been and what changes need to be made, if any. So I think the more transparent we can make it, the better.
Yeah, and I think just as good practice, sorry, my video looks like really bad. Sorry, it's like a 1980s crime movie or something. I think that there's two purposes. One is for this particular survey, because always the data handling is going to be particular to how the questions were asked. And I'd say that if someone was doing a second survey, maybe we'd look for some more reliable survey software to handle those contingencies. But the other is the paper for this exact data, where we just need to say exactly what we did and provide access to the original survey questions, as well as a comprehensive description of what we did to it. So it could be an appendix to the paper. It could also, if the paper points to a repo, then it could just live there as the documentation for this particular questionnaire. And then I think beyond that, into the discussion, when we could talk about, maybe some other way, some future recommendations for similar questionnaires that we've learned from this process.
Yeah.
And, that would kind of, I think, cover all bases that you would want as a researcher looking into this.
Okay. So just to confirm, Fiona, from the survey instructions, which of the following best describes your involvement? They were told if more than one option is applicable to you, please select the option that best describes your involvement and complete the survey in that capacity. You may complete the survey multiple times in alternative capacities if relevant by selecting an alternative option.
Right. So one question immediately is, if they come back to do it again under a different role, does it come under the same participant, or does that appear like a new participant?
It will appear as a new participant, because each row is a completion of the questionnaire.
Okay, and that was where if we had
picking up their IPs though, like
that's what I was going to say. That was we had one case where there was a double IP address, but we thought it was maybe the server.
Yeah, so we did kind of search the responses for the IP address. There was one incidence where it was the same IP, but in the responses, it was made clear that this is two different people in the same location.
So they had the same affiliation or the same descriptor?
Pardon, sorry, Amanda.
I'm wondering if they were just using the same computer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they weren't, and they gave, some of the responses were different. So and I think they put, we are in the same like location or something. So it was made clear that they were two different respondents.
Okay. I was just thinking of if they had selected the same descriptor, like clinician, then obviously it's not it's not a case like that where it could be the same person going back.
We definitely reviewed it before and it was different. It was, I can't remember exactly which one it is, but
we know that we haven't got any duplicates.
Yeah, it was not a duplicate response. It was two different people.
Okay. So in some of the questions, it is possible to select multiple roles for yourself as far as we could see. And we've preserved that in the way that it's been recoded.
Okay. And Rasha.
Hey, so if I understand correctly, then we gave them the option to say if they would have multiple roles, let's say, but then no one actually did that.
Well, I'm just thinking, would it be clear the only identifier would then be the IP address?
Okay, because
but
that
I don't think we asked them, have you completed this
twice?
Yeah.
But I mean, this brings us back to the point that we didn't mention in the analysis. Then if someone would say that, for example, that he's a clinician and he's a manufacturer, then like this double rule, because it doesn't reflect in the responses, but do we have it like in a way mentioned in the analysis, like for example, that how many?
I think there were some cases where that's possible, possibly the explanation in the analysis, but they were cases where we have to again check that the one is correct. So there are a few insertions there that Matt has queried whether they're correct or not, and so I need to be the third eyes on it. But as far as I could see, there were cases where it could have been that a clinician was also saying they were in a professional body, for example, or in a manufacturer.
Well, yeah.
At least the way we've recoded it, that's possible. Matt, that was coming in on some of the things you had flagged.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the initial question, which is which of these groups do you fit in, was a either or. I don't think you could choose more than one in that point, right?
No.
And later on,
not to that first question.
Yeah, I don't think we didn't ask that question again, but sort of there were other questions that would allow people to potentially shift their role during the questionnaire. I feel like the simplest thing to say there was that we know that at the beginning we said complete it under one of these roles. If you want to repeat it, do, but nobody did repeat it. So it seems to me like it's safest to assume that any response given at the beginning, that's their role, and that's how they've completed it.
Yeah.
I'll bear it in mind when I'm going through again to see if we have evidence where that occurs. Because I do think also there were some other questions where they could state their role.
Are you making the assumption though that they haven't done it at a different time if they do have a different role? Just thinking home computer versus a work computer, for example. So I'm not sure that we're gonna make that.
I think we should state that because we had no, I mean, we didn't explicitly ask that. Is this the second time? Are you completing this as a repeat?
Exactly.
But I think we can just state that limitation.
Yeah.
and say that they were invited to complete it under their main role, but to return and complete it under a different role if they wished. And then just say, if the person completed it a second time on a different computer or with a different IP address, we have no way knowing that.
I will add a limitations section and write that.
Okay, sounds good.
Because I will match it with what it says in the instructions to make sure that marries up. Okay. And that would then be a recommendation for the future, wouldn't it? You would explicitly ask, is this the second time you're completing this?
Yeah, or even like, I think some, just allow people to select maybe a couple of roles and put them in some kind of priority role.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? Because the reality is, if you're involved in a professional body and it's clinical and related to eye tracking, you're highly likely to have some kind of clinical role.
Yeah, or if you're a researcher placed in a hospital.
Yeah,
it gets these aren't very clear-cut sort of edges. So
I think we just put that in the limitations section and acknowledge that it, whilst we've tried to be inclusive of multiple users, people have
multiple roles.
It's not often as delineated as that, is it?
And it's a pretty edge case for where someone would do that and use a different computer each time. So I think it's fine.
Okay. I'm just going to quickly scoot back to the actions just to make sure we've got all of those. Reminder for the working group to leave comments on the Google Doc with an identifying name. I think that's covered. I think that's complete, because I think we just had one anonymous respondent, but I think, was that you, C1? Was that, I think you'd kind of...
yes, that was me, but I'll have a comment for Fiona, so that it was me. So sorry about that.
No problem. Again, we're just checking that it's an actual person, but that's great. So I think that was the only anonymous response. So I'll put that down as complete because it feels like everyone's got that message. And there was an action for the wider group to discuss file format for the future, and Rasha to add it to the wider ISCET agenda. So I guess it's things like our experiences with file format, making sure that that goes back to ISCET for some broader discussion. Have you got that? Should I mark that as complete, Rasha? Has that been done, or?
Yeah, I can put it in the preliminary agenda. So I just have that we were gonna give them updates on the whole survey, or do you want a more specific?
So I think a general update about the survey progress is fine, but there are some specific things for ISCET to consider. And the action from last time was about file format. We've been using Google Docs, but I think it was acknowledged and discussed that that's quite challenging, and that there might be better file formats to allow for a record of changes and updates and transparency. So it's whether ISCET want to adopt a file format or a recommendation, and because obviously work is now continuing in offshoot groups.
I remember we kind of concluded that we will use Latte, but we of course need to at least mention that.
And I think that also relates to what we're now talking about in terms of like data repository as well, and transparency of our documentation. So if you could take that as well as the survey general update, I think taking that back for discussion would probably be helpful. Is that as you understood it, Matt? I know that.
Yeah. I think basically having a toolkit for us to be able to collaborate that ISCET has access to. It's one of those things where to do things well, we probably need something paid for. At the moment, ISCET's only ongoing cost is the website cost, which I'm covering. But beyond that, at some point, we're going to need some way of paying for a slightly more in-depth system of member management and also collaborative tools and so on. There might be, for example, we've had this suggestion. Fiona suggested the overleaf, which has been used in the previous ISCET publications. So that's free and it's available. So it's a very long way of saying yes, that is right. That is what we were discussing. But yeah, I think it might be that we have to look into how we fund that as well. Potentially.
Yeah, I meant overleaf. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Fiona, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm very happy if we use overleaf, but I don't want to push just to software that I find convenient. But I do think it's good because it has the option of having quite a standard looking interface if you don't want to go into the code side of things. The other thing I was thinking is for the paper, we would probably need some kind of permanent place to park the data. And I was wondering if ISEV has any server space, or if maybe we have a journal in mind that they might actually offer permanent space to publish your data with the paper, because anywhere where we put it on overleaf or whatever, it's not really designed for permanent public access. So we would probably need to look into either ISEV have something, or maybe where, if it's published, then maybe one of the universities might have something, but it could be good to try and strategic to try and point towards a journal where they would have the ability to host the data.
So ISEV have their own journal, that is Documenta Ophthalmologica. I don't know, I can't recall, Gemma, whether we were planning on submitting it there or somewhere else.
I think we had talked about there.
And of course, ISEV do have, their web space and so on. I think we'd want to make sure if we're going to publish the data, we do it somewhere where we can get a DOI as well. And there are several repositories that can be used for that. The one looks like it's recently hosted by CERN. And any scientific data can be published there, and you get a DOI immediately, which is quite handy. And I guess you just need to find whatever organization you think is going to be around the longest. Now, ISEV have been around in some guys since 1957, so they seem a good bet.
I mean,
ISEV will be for similar.
The University of Sheffield, so a lot of institutions have their own, but
yeah, we have our own too. Yeah.
So that is a backup option, but I think it feels like keeping things more ISET and ISEV would be preferable to things being on multiple different institutions.
Yeah, and I think the journal option would probably be my preferred option because it's kind of independent, and it's just going to be easier for, like, if the paper is still up and accessible, then we can assume the data is too in that case.
Siwan.
Yeah, I would suggest to use GitHub, so you can put the data on GitHub. It's free and it's just open to public, so I think that would be nice. But the long term, if GitHub, you can have the link of the paper as well. So GitHub is it's a website to store the data. So share your code, store the data, and this is a good place. So I would suggest that's.
What's that one called?
Is GitHub the right place though for data as opposed to code?
Yes,
I've definitely used GitHub for codes and stuff, but I hadn't seen it as a data repository before.
I think you can. Yes, it's you can put data as well, so people actually can download the data from there.
Could you please place the name or the link in the comments, because I haven't got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Rasha, sorry, Fiona, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, so Git is fine for like group projects and things like that, and it is more designed for code and being able to blame code, but you can actually put papers there and be able to blame who did which text as well, and it integrates very nicely with Overleaf. You can actually have the Overleaf plots update automatically based on new data coming into your Git and things like that, which is good. But the issue with GitHub for permanent repository, the sort where it's like, here's the original data and everything we did with it, and we're making it accessible forever. Git isn't great for that, because as repos get old, they need maintenance or they'll no longer be accessible. So you need to have someone going in there and updating the Git with each new version, and it will age. Whereas the journals tend to have repos that are designed not for working on the data in that repo, but for keeping it long term where it doesn't age. So I think that if the journals have, if we could find a journal that has that sort of repo, it might be a better option. Not to say we couldn't also have a Git repo for ourselves and have data there too, but it doesn't have the longevity. It does require some maintenance.
Yeah, so I think all of this is probably part of the wider ISCET discussion, isn't it? So I think if you could take that back for discussion, Russia, I think we're having those discussions now, but we're hoping that the outputs from ISCET will grow. So this is going to be not a problem that's unique to us. Is that okay, Russia?
Yeah, yeah.
So file format and data repository and kind of sustainability for the long term.
Yeah, I wrote it down.
Thank you. So if there's nothing else pressing, can we kind of talk about the results and what Matt, Daniel and Fiona need from the group?
So I guess we're nearly there with the spreadsheet. I think we just have a couple of little tiny bits to fix up, and then it will be in a point where somebody could take a look at it to actually run the stats. I'll create this table in the document saying where those different column names are. So I don't know, Fiona or Daniel, do you feel there's anything else we need input on this step that we're doing, or is it really who takes it on from there?
I mean, I was planning to just go in and double check these ones that maybe are misplaced, and then maybe confer with Daniel and yourself where there's anything that we don't obviously have an answer for. But apart from that, as far as I'm concerned, I don't mind running the stats once I have the final list of questions and which variables with the variable name would be great.
Yep.
Are relevant to it. If I have all that, I'm fine to import and start plotting. But I think maybe it could be a good idea for either you or Daniel, once I've done the analysis and got some plots, I mean, there's not a lot of analysis to do really. Then it could be good for someone to independently run the plots too, just so that we can double check they look the same and nothing's gone wrong.
That's fine. Yeah, I can be the second person to do that.
Okay. And my approach there would be just to produce whatever I think could be interesting around these questions, and then leave it to the broader group to decide what to include or exclude. Like I'll produce more than we want to necessarily include.
Okay, so you'll generate the plots, and then you tell me what plots you've generated. I'll independently go and generate the same plots, and then we'll compare notes and hope we've got the same sort of thing.
Yep, sounds good.
Okay. Is there anything else you need from the wider group? Either people to help with that or be another stage of checking, or do you feel like you're sorted?
I feel like there's been so many steps to converting it right now that the next step would be from you, Gemma, to get what happened, something suitable for the kind of description we talked about, what happened up to the point we got the data, and then continue that and actually write down exactly what happened to the data, and then share that. And at that point, I really think it could be a good idea, just because it's so unwieldy at the minute. If just one other person could check we haven't got any misplaced ones or answers, that would be reassuring. But apart from that, I think we're good.
Do we have a volunteer that would be able to look at that with a fresh set of eyes?
Can you explain exactly again what I need? I think I can, but I need to make sure.
So Rasha, we have the original.
We'll have written up exactly what we did. So first of all, myself and Daniel met and we talked about recoding what were free text into several variables that are either 0 or 1, essentially. And a 1 is just like saying a tick. So we created new columns where it might have been one question. It might have had like 4 potential categories of answer, which let's say it was, you know, what kind of diseases? I'm making this up, it doesn't exist. But then we might have neurological diseases, ophthalmological, you know, and then if it was both, we'd put a 1 in both columns so that we can have that fine grain translation of the data. So essentially, it's just, we have now this huge file which has all of the text responses and all of the recoded data. And then looking across where the same question repeats up to 3 times or even 4, I think, in some cases.
Yeah, because there were multiple categories by which they could have answered that question.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. So those variables of free text responses can appear in many different places across the questionnaire results table. And that makes it just, the chance of human error is super high when it's that, you know, combination of very boring and very detailed. So just it's a question of looking at the text and seeing, okay, is there any misplaced ones? Because I was a little alarmed by the amount that Matt found, and I've yet to go through it. So it wasn't just 1 or 2 ones that we weren't sure should be there. It was quite a few. And so if I go through and I see a similar amount to Matt, then, you know, it's not going to be quite consensus just yet. But I think it will be too difficult for anyone else to do who hasn't been involved in this process until we've actually written up the steps. You'd need to read through what we intended to do before understanding if it's correct. It's not in any way complex, but it's just to actually have written down concretely what we did. Because right now the table is just huge and confusing, even for me who has designed what we should do. So I wouldn't want anyone else to try and handle it without having written that up.
So is it better, rather than a volunteer, to volunteer now, Fiona, that we write those steps of data handling, you guys complete the bits of the final bit of the results to get it to where you think it's complete and accurate, and at that point you say, okay, so I need somebody, and whoever's got a little bit of time at that point kind of volunteers to do that, because it feels like that all needs to be, somebody needs to have a good hour with a large screen on which to display that data and just have some time to go through and check.
I mean, to be honest with you, I think I'm actually going to print it and spread it out on a table, because the scrolling around is, it's like the structure is difficult to work with, the structure that it came out. So, but at the end of this step, once we're fully sure that the correct answers are in there, then we'll quickly be able to reduce it in size to just those numeric variables, and it'll be much, much clearer what we're dealing with. So yeah, maybe when we get to that point, Gemma, we just share with the wider group even and ask people to sign off on everything being in the right place if they have a chance to check in.
Okay. Amanda, were you going to come in on there as well?
I was just going to say I'm quite happy to have a look at it as well if we need. So I think the plan of sharing it in the wider group makes sense.
Thanks a lot. I've really advertised the task well.
Yeah, you've sold that job, Fiona. Thank you.
Yeah, you definitely did.
I mean, I don't want to.
No, I'm thinking through, like, could you do it column by column, highlight or identify which ones they are, and then condense the coding? Like, in my brain, I'm already kind of working out how that would get checked, how it happened originally. Yeah,
that's essentially what we've done, but it's going to be easier if we write up so there's, you know, something to check.
And Amanda has done some looking at the data and some early kind of handling of it, so you've probably got a bit of a head start on that, Amanda, haven't you?
Yeah, I'm quite happy to look at it because I did play with it originally. I'm really sorry I missed a couple of meetings at the end of last year.
That's okay.
It was all a bit of a mess.
Not a problem.
Come back.
Yeah, and I ended up having 2 back surgeries, so I'm happy to be back and I want to do stuff.
Okay. So, and then in our final 10 minutes, is there anything additional that we want to go through? What we're essentially suggesting with the manuscript is that we have this kind of data handling, probably as a separate document, but we refer to it in the text, and that we add a limitations section. And then as we're discussing what the limitations are, we just need to make sure that we're including that. But is there anything else that we need some further discussion on?
I would maybe just add that if anyone has any plots they would really like to see, to maybe just put them in as sort of a wish list.
Would you like those on the manuscript? Or
yeah, I think
you mean just in the chat now?
I mean, I think it makes sense to put it in on the manuscript as a comment, or just even put some text in there where this table is with the questions and variables. And just ask what plots might you like to see, and people could just put in, I'd like to see, you know, either a histogram of this, or I'd like to see such and such on a x-axis and this on a y, or whatever. If I have a wish list, I'll try and churn those plots out first.
Okay. Should we add that to the results, or should we add that to this table that we've preliminary got in? I guess it probably makes more sense on the table, doesn't it?
That would be good, because then everything's in the one place.
Okay. Okay. Is that you adding a column there, Matt?
Yeah, I've just done that.
You're anonymous ferret online, but I'm assuming that's
in. Yeah, okay. I am logged in on Google, so I don't know. Does anyone know, at least for the purposes of how do you log into this thing?
I don't know, because it's got everybody as anonymous animals, but that's
except
fine.
for you, I can see you.
I think it's whether or not you save to your drive,
right?
Or when it's shared, that might make a difference.
Okay.
That's fine, but that's probably most helpful, that if people have got questions that they would ideally like. Okay, so in our final 9 minutes, is there anything in addition that people would like to add or discuss? It feels like all of the actions are complete from the last meeting, or ongoing and nearly complete, and the main focus at the minute is the results before we move on to the discussion.
Fiona, can I just check with you? Could I have half an hour after this meeting before you make any further changes to the document you sent us just before the meeting? Because then
Absolutely,
yeah. And I'll make updates then from the responses that Daniel gave.
Okay.
Back at you as
I
a
don't think I saw Daniel's. Oh, you mean in the email?
Yeah, because I actually was in the process of changing that, and then you got in there, so I'm gonna.
Yeah, I'll wait for it. You can just ping me when you're ready with it, actually, or just send me back the current version when you're done.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so it feels like we're coming to a bit of a natural end. Is there anything that anybody else wants to add, Rasha?
I was just thinking, is it possible also to have a look on the analysis sheets that are like that you're working on? Like, it might be also nice to have a look on it. So the current analysis, like, do we have it as also a Google sheet that we can upload, or
so the
other than the one that is uploaded, that is shared, I mean the one that Danielle, Matt, and Fiona are working on?
Well, it sounds like they're in the middle of kind of recoding all of that, so maybe having
so
a
we'll
look.
wait until you okay.
We're currently bouncing it between the three of us as an email attachment, which I recognize is probably not the best way to do it, but I think we're so close to finishing that maybe when we've got that final one, then it would be a good place to upload to back onto Google or whatever, and then everyone would have access.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, Rasha, if you want to have a preview of it, I've no problem to,
I would like to be CC'd if that's fine, because I'm interested. I'm not sure. I didn't want to be like, in charge, because I've been in these times. It's kind of crazy for me. But yeah, I felt like while you're speaking that it might be good to be kind of there.
That's no problem. It's just at the moment, it's not going to be possible for anyone outside our group, this little group, to understand what the hell they're looking at, to be frank. Because right now the variable names are, we've taken a pragmatic approach to variable names and what they mean and how the different questions repeat and so on. So it's difficult until we've kind of made the variable names obvious what exactly they are and so on, if that makes sense. But I've no problem with forwarding it, just to be aware that there's some in-house coding going on in terms of naming things right now that we hope to make clearer.
Yeah. I understand that.
Matt and Fiona, I know you said that you two would be kind of doing some plotting over the next few weeks. Is there anything that I don't know if there's anything else like worth doing or that I should get on with? I don't know in this time.
Daniel, from my point of view, what could be useful would be if, I know that when we met first, we just, talked about what we were going to do, and it's quite systematic. But we do need to write up the steps of what was actually done. So maybe if we could link in on that would be good.
You can compile what we've already stated in all the emails and put it into an ordered list.
I think
against the manuscript.
I think if I start like a data handling document and I share it with everybody, I can obviously put my initial bit.
That would be great.
Kind of cleaning for the raw data, and then you guys can add to it, because it'll hopefully just.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah.
Okay. So in terms of like a follow-up meeting, I guess it sounds like we're all excited to get to the kind of analysis and looking at the results stage. What do we think is a realistic length of time for that?
A couple of weeks at least. I mean,
if we want to have all the plots and everything by then, should we say 3 weeks? Or is that, once I know what you're doing.
It sounds manageable.
We could, whatever you want.
But we could always pencil in a meeting anyway, and whenever the plots are ready, we'll share them.
Okay.
If it's before the meeting. So, and likewise, if we run into any problems, then maybe we need to discuss them actually to resolve. So
how about Tuesday, the 24th of Feb? So that's 3 weeks from today. Any objections to that suggestion?
Just checking the calendar. Yeah, that looks okay for me.
Daniel?
Sorry, I'm just checking my university timetable. I'm not free, but everything I have is sort of can change at the last moment, and please don't plan anything around.
Okay, that's fine. It just feels like there needs to be representation of you, Matt and Fiona. So I think collectively, if we've got some of you there, that's great. Amanda and C1, I'm aware that, how's this kind of time for you guys?
This is actually pretty good. This is 9:30 to 10:30 at night. So this is not bad considering the things that are like midnight and 1 a.m. So on the relative scale, I'm actually okay with this.
I'm also happy with this time.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any objection to 10:30 UK time?
That's okay for me.
Okay. I will pencil that in then.
So same time slot, just on the 24th?
Yeah. and
Yeah,
I'll
cool.
invite you all. I'll just
Thank you.
do that after the call. Okay, so any last things that people would like to raise before we sign off? Okay, thank you everybody for your contributions, but huge thanks to Daniel, Matt and Fiona for kind of picking up the results and taking on that baton, running with it for a bit.
Thanks for organising, Gemma.
No
Appreciate it.
problem. Okay,
Thank
I
you.
will
Thank you.
circulate some notes and actions much sooner than my previous meetings, and I'll send you the recording, Siwan.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Sylvia.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.